Discover the incredible journey of this grandma, a touching story of surprising resilience and transformation. Ruth had spent a lifetime wrapped in the warm, yeasty embrace of the bakery. Each dawn, she kneaded dough as if forming the bones of her own tired dreams. She stood at the window, flour streaking her cheek like hopeful paint, watching the world hustle past while her own life remained a still portrait, painted in tones of muted gray. Once, she longed for the glories of art, each color a promise of the vitality she'd once possessed. But at 72, those dreams felt like distant whispers, snuffed out by the mundane grind of daily routine. The bakery buzzed with activity, the scent of cinnamon and sugar enveloping everyone in a sweet clamor of warmth. Yet, as she handed over pastries with a practiced smile, a different ache clawed at her heart, a recurring question: had she allowed herself to be forgotten? Had her family forsaken her passion for the sake of their own expectations? She recognized the flicker of irritation that wouldn't die down, often blaming her tight-knit family for reinforcing her perceived role as caregiver, but the truth nestled deeper within. Guilt wrapped her in its sinewy arms, truth tasted sour. Everything shifted when Emily, her estranged granddaughter, returned. Fresh from the high-stakes pulse of city life, Emily's presence was a storm cloud hovering above Ruth's ordered existence. The tension crackled. Ruth tried to remember the girl she once cuddled and captured in vibrant strokes on her canvas, yet Emily stood at a distance, blending into the bakery's shadows, frustrated and distressed by her own disillusionments. Ruth's heart thudded with an unwanted hope. Could they reconnect, or would this be another reminder of unfulfilled dreams? As the days passed, late nights spilled into kitchen conversations over cocoa and thick slices of chocolate cake. Ruth began to unveil her artistry, her once buried passion bubbling up like yeast in the dough. Emily listened, enraptured, absorbing stories of audacious brushes and the thrill of exhibitions that had faded into the backdrop of her mind. Yet with each revelation, Ruth could feel the weight of her past decisions pressing down harder, the feeling of being the eternal caretaker conflicting with the yearning to be seen. She questioned whether these moments brought the rejuvenation she desired, or if they were just another escape from confronting her own life disappointments. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But their budding relationship began to fray as buried resentments clawed their way to the surface. Emily struggled with her decision to return, feeling as though she had abandoned the very dreams that Ruth had sacrificed. Ruth sensed the bitterness clawing its way into her heart, tempting her to lash out at the weight of choices made years ago. With anxiety threading through every conversation, each story bubbled with complex tensions. They concocted dreams of an art show, a dazzling representation of their newfound connection, yet the shadows of betrayal loomed. As the opening night approached, an unanticipated betrayal cracked the bonds they had forged. The whisper of doubt loomed large, resentment threatened to surf and pull them under. Ruth faced her crossroads against the quiet backdrop of old regrets. Would her heart clasp the joy of being seen, or swallow the bitter pill of revenge? The weight of unforgiven slights hung in the air, powerful and unresolved, keeping the two women inches apart, yet as distant as the colors on her palette. Ruth's resolve darkened. Could she reclaim her vibrant life before the shadows pulled her under? The days slipped by, each sunrise revealing a newfound urgency within Ruth, threading through her heart like the flower dusting her countertops. The art show loomed closer, an approaching storm that stirred both excitement and deep-seated anxiety. She found herself wrestling with a growing void between the bubbling hope of reconnection with Emily and the gnawing resentment that curled like a dark smoke around her heart. In her quiet moments, With the taste of dough lingering on her fingertips, Ruth questioned whether she could ever fully forgive. The weight of Emily's return met with the heaviness of unaddressed feelings. Each interaction seemed to hover in a delicate balance, a tightrope walk over the deep chasm of unspoken grievances. Ruth envisioned the vibrant hues of her artistry igniting the room that night, yet the palette felt incomplete without clarity and resolve. As she prepared for the art show, her thoughts drifted. Would showcasing her pieces laced with memories and unfulfilled dreams, push Emily away or draw her in closer? The realization hit like a splash of cold water. She was not merely revisiting her past, she was carving her identity anew. Her hands, once merely tools for baking, were becoming instruments of expression, capturing the essence of a life long neglected. One afternoon, as Ruth meticulously brushed strokes of indigo onto a canvas that had always sat untouched in the corner, she realized she could no longer hide from her feelings. She mustered the courage to approach Emily with the vibrance she had unearthed. But the atmosphere grew tense once more. As they stood before the canvas, the broader strokes of their miscommunication became glaringly evident. "Why can't you see how hard it is for me?" Emily's voice trembled with an undertone of anger, masking vulnerability. "You and your art, it's like you never wanted me to pursue my own dreams." The accusation hit Ruth like a brick, her heart raced as she wrestled with the swirling emotions inside. Ruth turned slowly, searching for words that could breach the widening chasm. "But I wanted to protect you, to guide you. Somewhere along the way, I lost myself in that need." The sincerity of her own statement shocked her. It encapsulated her struggle as caregiver, a role she had played without question until this point. In that moment, impulse clashed with fears. Ruth saw Emily not only as her granddaughter but as a reflection of dreams interwoven and distorted by expectations. The artistry they hoped to showcase was more than mere paint on canvas, it was a representation of their mutual pain, delivering a promise of revival, if they chose to embrace the vulnerability it necessitated. Hesitation clenched Ruth's throat as she offered a tentative invitation. "Let us make this show about both of us, Emily. Let it speak of healing and forgiveness." Would she be brave enough to let her emotions seep into her art, however raw or unsettling? Emily's eyes flickered with surprise, a mix of hope and doubt sparking within them. It was the willingness to confront the past that could tether them, yet raw courage dashed against self-doubt kept Ruth in place. The question lingered in the air: could they reshape their narratives into something brighter together, or were they bound to repeat the same mistakes, stifling their growth? As the evening of the art show approached, the tension coiled tighter. Standing before the canvas, Ruth felt weighted by the unresolved remnants of their fractured relationship. Just as she opened her mouth to extend an olive branch, a shift in the atmosphere seemed to ripple through the bakery, a fateful interruption looming ahead. Could the confrontation they both desperately needed finally ignite the transformative spark, or would fear extinguish the flame before it even had a chance to flicker? Ruth took a deep breath, the familiar scent of baking bread mixing with the paint thinner that lingered from her canvas work. Anticipation hunched her shoulders as she faced the looming decision points ahead. She had suggested making the show about both her and Emily, yet neither of them had a clue how to bring those feelings to life on canvas, nor how to reconcile their shared past into a present they could accept. The hours before the show sped by in frenzied preparations. Ruth meticulously arranged her pieces, each stroke of paint echoing a piece of her heart, both tender and raw. Emotions surged as she recalled her earlier resolve. She had committed to putting not just her art, but her soul out on display. Yet, unease twisted in her gut. Was this act of vulnerability reckless, an invitation for Emily to see the deeper scars of their shared experience, or an opening for healing? Just as the sun dipped low, casting a golden hue through the bakery, Emily entered, hesitation etched across her face. Ruth noticed the way her granddaughter fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, masking her own anxiety. For a moment, the weight of those unsaid words threatened to suffocate them both. Ruth, Emily started, simmering emotions sharpening her voice. I want to give this show a real shot, but am I allowed to express my truth, too? I worry we'll get lost in what you want. Those words pierced Ruth. Deep down, she recognized the truth in them. She had been so focused on her own journey of reclaiming lost identity that she might have overlooked Emily's desperate need to carve her own path. It was time to relinquish the reins, however difficult that would be. Taking that step back felt dizzying, yet also liberating. Emily, yes, I want you to express your truth, she replied, gentleness coloring her words. This isn't just my moment. It's ours. However raw or jarring it may be, let us paint from who we've become through all this. She met Emily's gaze, her heart racing. Would this willingness to surrender control allow their narratives to intertwine, or was it merely a repeat of past follies? Ruth had to confront the uncomfortable truth that vulnerability was just as frightening for her as it was for Emily. In the moments that followed, a cautious discussion unfolded, transforming into an explosion of ideas. Each concept shared ignited something inside Ruth, a revelation that she could not only create art, but she could also help shape an environment that welcomed individuality. As they rifled through sketches and fragments of inspiration, the golden light faded, leaving an intimate glow that felt charged with potential. This moment was a pivotal leap into the unknown. It was both exhilarating and daunting as Ruth questioned another layer of her identity. Would the audience accept a collaboration so tightly tied to their complicated past? Closing in on their decisions, a frantic energy surged in the air. Just then, the door swung open with an unsettling creak, interrupting the creative flow. The sound seemed to echo with vulnerabilities yet unvoiced. Ruth turned, heart thudding against her ribcage. Was it fear gripping her, or was it hope? The moment hung heavily between them as familiar faces began filing into the bakery. Silence fell like a veil over them, and suddenly the enormity of what lay before them collided with that last fragile thread of resolve. Could they truly confront their histories and emerge stronger, or would the weight of their past eclipse their potential for a bright new future? Ruth closed her eyes for a brief moment, inhaling deeply as the warm and slightly burnt scent of the bread swirled around her, grounding her amid the chaos. The faces filling the space, derisive, judgmental, or supportive, fueled her anxiety. Each set of eyes seemed to scrutinize not just her art, but the life woven through the brushstrokes. Would they understand? Could Emily's words resonate with them? Emily's presence at her side reignited a flicker of shared determination. Ruth glanced at her granddaughter, whose own artistic spirit was palpable. This wasn't just a showcase of paintings, it was a testament to their shared vulnerabilities, their intertwined lives, and more importantly, their voices. As the attendees mingled, Ruth felt a push toward clarity. She realized that every emotion they had discussed was not merely a component of a larger narrative, it was a fundamental part of who they had become. The notion of creating complementary pieces, each reflecting their unique struggles, could be their shared strength. Still, she couldn't shake the invasive doubts that whispered at the back of her mind. Was this venture futile? What if their individual truths clashed rather than harmonized? Determined, Ruth turned to the wall of canvases she had painstakingly prepared. Pain struck her heart as she examined each piece. Raw feelings of loss, hope, and redemption spilled onto the canvases she had painted just for this moment. The colors sang of her journey, yet the fear of being misunderstood loomed larger than ever. Do you see it? Ruth asked Emily, pointing to a vibrant depiction of a field beneath a swirling sky. This one speaks of the chaos I felt after your mother left. I want people to feel that, to understand the weight of abandonment. Emily studied the painting, her brow furrowing in contemplation. It's beautiful, Grandma. But what if I overlay it with something I don't know, more chaotic? Something that depicts how I felt during those same moments. The idea struck Ruth as both brilliant and terrifying. Could they allow their pains to collide openly? Yet the question of how such a combination would be received tainted her excitement with trepidation. Perhaps we should, Ruth replied slowly, her mind racing through potential reactions. It might be what allows us to bridge the gap between our experiences. In doing so, we are not only showcasing our relationship but also the complexities of healing. The atmosphere in the bakery shifted as laughter and chatter echoed around them. Ruth's heart swirled with a blend of anticipation and dread. Would their art turn out as messy as their past? With renewed purpose, they began sketching ideas fervently, layering new concepts atop existing forms. As the minutes passed, she noticed a burgeoning excitement take root in Emily, her confidence blooming as she contributed ideas freely, breaking free from the shadow that had stifled her. But the shadows didn't fade away entirely. In tandem with the light, an uninvited guest, a familiar face appeared in the doorway, a figure from Ruth's past who had once played a significant role in shaping her identity. Her breath hitched, and a sudden wave of vulnerability rushed over her, reminding her that confronting the past wouldn't just be an artistic endeavor. Ruth stood still, watching as this person approached. Would this figure slam the door shut on the growth she and Emily had begun to embrace? The thought twisted her stomach into a knot as she assessed the implications. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Emily's voice drew her back to the present, concern lacing her tone. As she opened her mouth, words of assurance teetered on the edge of her lips, but Ruth hesitated. The moment stretched, intensifying the questions burdening her mind. Was she truly ready to confront the ghosts of her past? The energy shifted dramatically, leaving an unsettling weight in the air. Just as she began to formulate a response, the unspoken presence of their history loomed larger than ever. Ruth's heart raced. A confrontation was inevitable now. Would she find the strength to share her vulnerabilities openly, or would the specter of her past dictate her future once more? Ruth's thoughts raced as she searched for the right words, her past colliding with her present in a chaotic dance. The figure stepping toward her was a ghost she tried to bury, a part of her story that seemed to scream for acknowledgement. As the figure came closer, she could feel the room's energy shift like the air before a storm, an impending confrontation heavy with unresolved emotions. "Ruth," the figure said, the voice piercing her thoughts like a shard of glass. "It's been a while." Recognition washed over Ruth, accompanied by a wave of vulnerability. Each syllable from this person carried an echo of her younger self, those days filled with passion yet overwhelmed by insecurities, tethered by expectations yet yearning to break free. "Yes, it has," she replied, a cautiousness threading through her words as she tried to mask her trepidation. Emily's curious gaze darted between them, instinctively sensing the tension. "Do you know each other?" she asked, her tone innocently probing. Ruth's heart sank. Could she navigate this conversation in a way that wouldn't burden her granddaughter, who stood on the brink of her own creative awakening? As a rooted fear gripped her, it became glaringly evident that this moment wasn't just a chance encounter, it was a critical juncture in her development, one where she could either reclaim her past or let it continue to overshadow her present. "We worked together once. Long ago," Ruth explained, focusing on Emily, attempting to draw her gaze away from the unfolding storm. "I was different then." "Different?" The figure raised an eyebrow, the challenge clear in their voice. "Or simply hiding? Because it still looks like you're running away." Each word felt like an arrow aimed at the core of Ruth's self-doubt, piercing the well-constructed defenses she had spent years fortifying. Ruth swallowed hard, a mixture of anger and fear bubbling inside. "I'm not running," she finally asserted, determination seeped into her tone. "I've faced my demons, and I'm ready to let the world see who I am. I'm ready to share that with Emily." The figure's expression softened, revealing an unexpected vulnerability. "Is that what this is about? The paintings?" "Yes," Ruth replied, sensing the shift in the air. The confrontation was no longer an assault, it had morphed into something else, an opening. She could feel the art beneath her fingertips, thick with emotions waiting to be expressed. Emily, sensing her grandmother's growing confidence, ventured closer. "Grandma, maybe it's time to show what we've been working on," she suggested, her voice a gentle encouragement that resonated through Ruth's uncertainty. In that moment, Ruth felt an internal shift, a catharsis brewing in her chest as she faced the figure from her past. "I've spent too long letting fear dictate my life. This isn't just about painting, it's about owning my story." The figure looked at her, a flicker of respect passing through their eyes. "Then show me. Show everyone." Ruth felt her heart race, a mixture of relief and raw excitement stirring deep within. This was the moment she had yearned for, an opportunity to expose the complexities of her journey and, more importantly, to showcase the resilience that had arisen from it. As she and Emily prepared to display their collaborative effort, Ruth intently studied the canvas that bore witness to their intertwined experiences. Each brushstroke was a step forward, a confrontational embrace of the past that now had a chance to inform a richer narrative. But just as she began to articulate her thoughts, a new trembling from within threatened her resolve. She could see the eyes of the attendees shifting toward them, curiosity mingled with skepticism. The fear of judgment still loomed large, taunting her, begging her to forget this step forward. "Are you ready?" Emily whispered, the question reverberating in the charged space. Ruth took a breath, a cascade of past regrets mingling with present hope. "As ready as I'll ever be," she mustered, though doubt gnawed at her insides. As she approached the canvas, Ruth realized that this was more than a confrontation. It was the beginning of a healing process where her artistic expressions could break free from the constraints of expectation. Just before she spoke, a question ignited in her mind: will vulnerability become her salvation, or would the weight of her past stifle her voice once more? The answer lingered in the air, elusive yet tantalizing, as she prepared to step onto the precipice of her future. Ruth stood before the canvas, feeling the coolness of the surface thrumming beneath her fingertips. The gallery buzzed with a blend of murmurs and laughter, but all she could hear was the chaotic rhythm of her own heartbeat, a persistent reminder of the stakes at hand. Dread and exhilaration warred within her as she searched her thoughts, grappling with the power of her past while desperately trying to anchor herself in the moment. "Just breathe," she murmured to herself, drawing strength from her memory of countless moments spent absorbed in her art. Each brushstroke was a notation of personal triumph and failure, a visual translation of a life lived in pursuit of fulfillment. Could she effectively transpose that into words? Emily stood beside her, beaming with pride, her youthful confidence sparking a warmth within Ruth. "You can do this, Grandma." The encouragement reminded Ruth that this was not purely her battle, it was theirs, intertwined through creativity and vulnerability. As she glanced around the room, the figures that encircled them appeared judgmental. How would they perceive her work? Would they see the emotional fractures she had learned to paint over? Clearing her throat, she began to speak, her voice trembling only slightly. "This painting, this process," she gestured towards the artwork, a chaotic explosion of colors, steeped in personal significance, "it's a representation of resilience. Both my own and Emily's. It reveals not just what we see on the surface, but the layers beneath." The murmurs softened, their attention narrowing in, as if the air thickened with unspoken anticipation. Ruth felt embers of fear stir but made a choice: she would not retreat. "I had a life colored with shadows. I was often afraid to embrace my voice or my creativity. Fear kept me from sharing my truth, and I know I am not alone in that." A ripple of understanding rolled through the audience. She could see their facial expressions change, curiosity morphing into empathy. Ruth took another step, digging deeper into her emotional terrain. "These colors represent decisions made against the tides of fear and the struggles I faced. Art is not just what I create, it is everything I have endured to stand here today with my granddaughter, sharing this moment. Each word became more poignant, a carving of her story visualized through vivid imagery. Glancing at Emily, she felt an insatiable drive to guide her granddaughter without the chains of her own doubts corroding their bond. "Art saved me," Ruth declared, a wave of passion swelling inside her. "It pushed me to uncover the layers of myself that had turned to stone through years of silence. I know now that my story deserves to be told just as much as anyone else's. It's never too late to reimagine our narratives, to redefine ourselves." The room fell into a profound silence, a testament to her vulnerability that resonated with each soul present. Ruth could feel the weight of her words land softly among the crowd, echoing their own buried fears and untold stories. But just as the warmth of confrontational acceptance began to wrap around her, the figure from her past shifted uncomfortably in the corner of her vision, frail whispers of disbelief crawling back into her mind. Could she truly allow these sentiments to take root? What if she had revealed too much? The tension threaded through her as new thoughts sprang forth. With the same chains that held her back in the past prove stronger than the hope she clung to now? Could she truly transform fear into an empowering force? "Ruth, is this the beginning of your comeback?" Emily's question, innocently inquiring yet deeply pointed, sent tremors through her thoughts. Ruth looked back at the canvas, layers of pigment reflecting her journey. Could it be a stepping stone to dive into a deeper exploration of her own truth? Would she dare push the boundaries even further? With a deep breath, she forged ahead, ready to confront not just their perceptions but her own internal limitations. "This is only the beginning, and I am ready to dig deeper than I ever thought possible." With those words hanging heavily in the air, she felt a spark ignite within, a primal urge to forge through the shadows into the uncharted expanse of personal rediscovery and artistic expression. Would she embrace this call to action, or would doubts once again hold her hostage? The walls of her past loomed beyond the canvas, daring her to confront them directly. Ruth felt the weight of the room shifting as she stepped away from the canvas, her heart racing but a new rhythm settling in, a resolve that felt stronger than fear. She had laid bare her emotional fabric, threading between her vulnerability and a budding defiance. The echo of her words clung to her, stirring a mixture of defiance and elation. Suddenly, the applause erupted, a tidal wave of approval crashing against her. But beneath the surface lay a maelstrom of questions churning within her. What came next? Would she let this momentum slip away like the paint that blurred across her easel? "Are you okay, Grandma?" Emily's voice, laced with curiosity, cracked through Ruth's spiraling thoughts. Ruth blinked, pulling her attention back to Emily's waiting gaze. "I think I just need a moment." She smiled, though uncertainty lurked behind it. Amid the revelry, a chill swept through her, pulling her back to the figure lurking in the corner, a reminder of the barriers she hadn't yet broken. She pushed through the crowd, headlines of admiration and congratulatory remarks washing over her, but they felt distant, almost surreal. She just needed to step outside, to breathe the cool night air and clear her mind. As she exited into the evening, the crisp air wrapped around her like an embrace. But it was the loneliness of a deeper shadow that lingered, a remnant from her past that she had yet to confront. What would she have to face tomorrow? The figure lingered in her thoughts. It was hard to remember a time when their presence hadn't woven into her self-doubt. She would have to decipher this part of her journey, and she would have to do it alone. Yet, she questioned whether alone was the right term. Emily's unwavering support ignited something in her, a call to transform her next steps into a collective endeavor, an invitation to dig deeper, not just for herself, but for the legacy she would leave for her granddaughter. "Ruth." A voice called to her, breaking her contemplative state. She turned to see her friend Therese striding towards her, her face lit with an infectious enthusiasm. "I couldn't help but overhear your speech. That was incredible. You really opened up." "Thanks, Therese." I felt like I needed to share my truth. But I also feel unsteady. Like I just opened Pandora's box. Therese's smile faded slightly but remained warm. What is wrong? Are you second-guessing it? Ruth took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the horizon. It's just, the past is still so raw. I'm terrified that addressing it might sink me instead of healing me. Am I strong enough for this? Am I ready for the truth? Do you remember when you painted that mural in the community center? Therese asked, her tone shifting to sincerity. You uncovered so much beauty there, your voice came alive through those colors. You can't let the shadows silence you now. Ruth absorbed Therese's words, recognizing the thread of truth woven into them. The mural held a power that defied her insecurities. For once, she allowed the idea that her art didn't just expose her deepest wounds, it held the potential to heal both her and others. Maybe it's time to create something new, Ruth suggested, hope threading through her voice. Something that embodies this fear but transforms it into light. Yes. Therese exclaimed. A new piece. That will reflect where you've been and where you want to go. It's a powerful way to confront what haunts you. Ruth felt a surge of energy, a vision forming of how she could represent her journey through the canvas. But as she looked back towards the gallery, uncertainty flashed through her mind. Would this exploration bring about more shadows or, if faced, chase away the hidden specters that loomed so closely? Will you help me brainstorm? I want to make this piece not just about me, but about what fear holds for so many of us, Ruth implored. Absolutely. Let us dive into this together, Therese responded, a spark igniting within her. As they walked back inside, Ruth felt each step anchor her more firmly in determination. She had crossed a line today, revealing her truth. Through art, yet she knew the path ahead would demand more than mere courage. It asked for exploration, commitment, and the delicate balance of vulnerability and strength. Yet, poised on the brink of this undertaking, she found herself questioning, what would this new artistic endeavor unearth, and were the shadows ready to be faced at last? Would they finally reveal the full spectrum of her resilience? The questions loomed as she stepped towards the canvas again, ready to embark on yet another chapter of her life that lay just beyond her reach, waiting to be defined. Ruth stood before her canvas, the surface gleaming under the gallery lights, yet she felt a shadow emanating from her own doubts. Each stroke of the brush pushed against the walls of her self-imposed limitations. The vibrant colors she envisioned flickered at the edges of her mind, but what if she couldn't capture the essence of what lay inside? What if the canvas became a mirror reflecting all her unworthy fears back at her? As her heart thrummed in competition with her thoughts, she opened her sketchbook, its pages crisp and untouched. The notebook felt like a safe harbor, a sacred space where she could explore her thoughts without the weight of judgment. Placing it on the stand, she began to jot down fragments of her ideas, concepts of fear intertwined with strength, shadows chasing after the light. But with each word, a familiar figure cropped up again, lingering in the corners of her memory, the deep voice that once silenced her, now challenging her to find her footing. Think about the mural, Therese's earlier words resonated, unraveling a thread of courage woven into her artistic history. What did you channel then? Ruth paused, her grip tightening on the pen. She remembered that moment vividly, the exhilarating release of colors from her heart, infusing her pain with warmth, transforming sorrow into breathtaking beauty. What had she synthesized then? The messiness of life had become her essence on that wall, a vibrant testament to triumph. Transformation, she murmured, the words spilling onto the page. I need to paint my transformation, not just my fear. Each shadow has its purpose, it's time to illuminate them. She could feel the swell of renewed energy pulse through her as she grasped the nature of what she wanted to achieve. With this new direction igniting her thoughts, Ruth flipped to a fresh page, beginning to draft a potential outline for her work. She envisioned layers, each layer representing different experiences, colors acting as symbols of the fears she had carried and the hope she had begun to cultivate. But beneath the exhilaration also lurked a gnawing anxiety. What if layering meant unearthing things she was not ready to confront? Taking a moment, she leaned back as Therese continued to discuss techniques, losing herself in the cacophony of voices and clinking glasses around them. Ruth could see Emily wandering through the crowd, her curious eyes scanning, soaking in everything like a sponge, absorbing the nuances of resilience, art, and authenticity. Ruth turned back to her outline, writing down keywords: growth, pain, healing. "This isn't just for me," she whispered under her breath, "it's for her too." Each layer would not only tell her story but would serve as a guiding light for Emily, a beacon illuminating pathways of understanding and empowerment. Tension tightened her muscles as she dipped the brush into her first color. What if I fail? The thought crossed her mind involuntarily. But then another voice fought back: what if this becomes the piece that transforms everything? She pressed the brush against the canvas, searching for the perfect hue that reflected her resolve. As bold pigments danced together, she felt everything within her begin to shift. Each stroke became a deliberate confrontation with the trepidation that had long tethered her. She could feel those shadows begin to separate, to splay out against the canvas before her. The rhythm of creation began, yet the urgency of her emotions surged. This moment demanded more than mere artistic expression. It beckoned a reckoning with past traumas that always shadowed her creativity. In that moment of clarity, Ruth understood that this was only the beginning. Every brushstroke would challenge her to confront the deeper aspects of herself she had avoided for far too long. As she painted, she realized that understanding her fears wouldn't just illuminate her path, but would pave the road for Emily, showing her that facing the darkness could lead to profound light. But as she finished the first layer, another deep-seated doubt crept in. Would she possess the strength to delve even deeper, to confront the voice that haunted her still? Would she reveal the truths hidden beneath the layers? With the night stretching ahead of her, Ruth's determination returned with renewed ferocity. She would break this cycle, unearthing the shadows and painting her truth with an unwavering hand. The question remained, though: would she be brave enough to expose not just her present but the painful past that shaped her? Would she embrace the entire spectrum of her story, or would fear once again render her mute? The canvas awaited, and so did her journey into the depths of her soul, where the real battle lay. Ruth inhaled deeply, her heart racing as the brush met the canvas again. With each stroke, she pushed the boundaries of her self-doubt, but there was a thickness in the air, like the tension before a storm. She could see the vibrant strokes blooming beneath her hands, shaping into something raw and revealing. Yet, beneath that burgeoning excitement was a darkness she had kept buried for far too long. What if this artwork forced her to face the very truths she had painstakingly crafted into her mundane existence? Painting would require her to be vulnerable, exposing the shadows she had maneuvered around her entire life. Each color felt like a new layer of skin, unprotected and raw. She paused, brush hovering above the canvas, consumed by her thoughts. Thoughts of loss, of shouting matches that echoed in empty rooms, of moments stolen by the shadows that loomed during her childhood. The confrontations with those memories were as daunting as they were necessary. Each connection she made on the canvas was not just about art but about reckoning. Ruth dipped the brush into a deep indigo, the color of twilight, symbolizing the depths of her fears. As she mixed it with a hint of gold, she reminded herself that even in the dark, there is light to be found. The juxtaposition of these colors crystallized her understanding. Life was not simply about avoiding pain, it was about transformation and illuminating what had once seemed insurmountable. "Can I really capture this?" she whispered, half doubting her abilities. But she knew that every artist must wrestle with their own ghosts. She picked up the brush, her grip steady and deliberate now. Each deliberate stroke released a memory, piecing together the tapestry of her life with both vibrant color and stark shadow. With every point of contact between bristle and canvas, she discovered fragments of herself that she had tucked away, afraid to reveal to the world. There was something almost liberating in this act of creation. She felt an urgency to express each layer, as if it held the key to unlocking deeper reservoirs of wisdom she had yet to explore. In this moment, she became both the painter and the subject, facing each shadow with equal amounts of fear and curiosity. What secrets lay behind the colors? What lessons awaited in the pain? As she shifted her attention back to the sketchbook, she began to draw faces, those she had loved, those she had lost, and those who had influenced her journey. They were the shadows of her past as much as they were the beacons lighting her way forward. Each figure hinted at stories, lessons learned, and the wisdom that emerged from the struggles she had endured. But in the midst of this creative urgency, doubt flared once more. What if her revelations weren't enough? What if those shadows gathered strength, refusing to be silenced by a mere brush of paint? Would she end up battling her fears alone, even with the strokes of vivid color illuminating the canvas? The insecurity seeped in like a creeping vine, choking every cautious plant around it. Ruth stood frozen, brush hovering mid-air, her heart loud in her ears as her doubts clashed with her aspirations. Could she bridge the divide between her paint and her truths, or would the regrets hold her captive once more? Uncertain but undeniably resolved, she pressed the brush down against the canvas, feeling every fiber of her being push against the fear that threatened her creativity. As she painted a final swirl of color, a voice echoed in her head, an amalgamation of memories urging her to be brave. The unsettling thought flickered through her mind: just how deep would she need to dig to find her truest self? As she stepped back to survey her progress, the growing complexity of her story danced before her, ready to unfold. Each layer revealed not just her fears but the hope burgeoning beneath them. But what if confronting the darkest layers meant unleashing an even greater storm? What awaited behind those revelations, like the secrets waiting to be uncovered? As the tension wrapped around her, she understood there was no turning back now. The canvas demanded authenticity, and she was about to face the most daunting chapter of her past yet. And with every brush stroke, anticipation stirred. The unveiling was just beginning. Would she find herself in the chaos, or would she remain forever shackled in the shadows? Ruth stood in the gallery, the air thick with anticipation. The art show was imminent, and her heart raced with both excitement and trepidation. This was her moment. The culmination of years spent nurturing her passion was about to take flight. Behind her, the canvases displayed vibrant hues interwoven with the colors of her traumas, each brushstroke telling a story of resilience, loss, and growth. The applause echoed in her ears as she caught sight of familiar faces. Emily stood close, her presence a grounding force that filled Ruth with an unanticipated warmth. Over the weeks, they had dismantled the walls that kept them apart. Together, they had created a body of work that illuminated their struggles and celebrated their triumphs. "Are you ready?" Emily whispered, a nervous energy bubbling beneath her calm demeanor. Ruth took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her past surge through her, but it was no longer heavy, rather, it was a badge of honor she was prepared to wear. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, meeting her granddaughter's expectant gaze. This wasn't merely an exhibit of artwork, it was a potent representation of healing, a form that had transcended mere expression. As the attendees began milling about, an energy coursed through the room. Ruth felt a beckoning call. It was time to confront not just her creations but also the truths they represented. She moved to the center of the gallery, her heart pounding, but this time with purpose. "Thank you for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady as she looked into the expectant faces surrounding her. "This isn't just my story, it's a testament to the resilience of our human experience." Her opening words struck a chord, the audience's attention focused entirely on her. Ruth spoke of her struggles, the shadows that had haunted her life, and how fear had stifled her creativity for decades. "Art is a language of healing," she declared. For so long, I allowed my past to define me. But in reclaiming my art, I began to uncover the beauty beneath the pain. This canvas, each work here, is the embodiment of that journey. The room held its breath, absorbing the weight of her transparency. Ruth pointed to a particularly vivid piece, a tumultuous blend of colors, representing the chaotic emotions of her life. Each of us carries shadows. It's how we navigate them that defines who we become. Her words hung in the air, striking at the heart of what they'd all experienced. Her reflection, encapsulated in paint, resonated with the pain hidden behind every smile. As she concluded her speech, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. The fear that had once paralyzed her faded into determination. The applause erupted around her, louder and more fervent than before, a palpable acknowledgement of her courage. Emily's eyes sparkled with pride, a spark Ruth had long thought extinguished. In that moment, it felt as though the decades fell away. The burdens she had carried were now tools, illustrating not just her suffering but her growth. This was her life's work, now shared, now celebrated, no longer hidden in the recesses of fear. Weeks passed, and as the art show garnered attention, Ruth found herself in a newfound space of confidence. She began leading workshops, teaching others to explore their creative selves, unwinding threads of vulnerability. Each session unfolded like brushstrokes on canvas, with students pouring raw emotions into art, transforming their narratives into something tangible. Ruth thrived, no longer confined to the shadows of guilt or expectation. She had established herself as a recognized voice in the community, her workshops becoming lively spaces for exploration and healing. The vibrant colors poured forth from her as she guided others through their own discoveries, illuminating lost dreams waiting to be embraced. One afternoon, surrounded by laughter and creativity, Ruth glanced at Emily, who was engaged in her own colorful expression, adding her layer to a shared canvas. It dawned on her then that this was the fulfillment she had long sought, the synergy of dreams. Interwoven through empathy, bridging the gap that had kept them apart for so long. Ruth had achieved personal transformation beyond her wildest dreams. She stood firm in her identity, an artist, a teacher, a grandmother, and a woman who had dared to face her past. The journey had reshaped her, paving the way for renewed visions and aspirations. She now knew that shadows were not to be feared, instead, they were integral parts of life's spectrum, illuminating the depth of the human experience. As she prepared for yet another session filled with laughter and creativity, Ruth felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had not only reclaimed her passion, she had finally become the architect of her own legacy. Emboldened by her journey, she faced the world with a steady hand, prepared to paint a future as colorful and vibrant as the canvases that celebrated her journey, a legacy of resilience ignited through vulnerability. It wasn't just her story anymore. It was a mellifluous, a collection of unique stories intertwined, an intricate balance of despair and light, sprouting forth into something magnificent. This was her moment. The moment when she knew she was truly alive and ready to embrace all that lay ahead. Now is the time for you to seize the moment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of overcoming struggles. You need to support this channel more than ever. Don't wait even one more second.